All my life, I've had an XXL mindset, but until now, it's been trapped in a feeble, measly, size large body. But no longer. I self identify as a hard gainer, so last year I set out on a mission to actually finally do a proper bulk, and I managed to gain 20 pounds in 1 year. And so today I'd like to share with you my experience of bulking. And by experience, I really mean what is it like to live in a body that's 11% heavier than it was a year ago? Because when people set out on a mission to bulk, they really have one of two goals in mind. They either want to be more muscular or they want to be stronger or more performant in some sort of lifting or sport. But along with those main effects come a host of other side effects that I personally was not really expecting. And I think that if you've never done a concerted bulk either, they might surprise you as well. So if you're interested in how I gained all of this weight, you can go ahead and watch this video up here. Today, I'm really going to focus on the experience of what it was actually like. And in exchange, I'd love to hear about your personal experience with gaining weight. What about bulking surprised you that you didn't expect at the outset? Let us know in the comments. So first, for a little bit of context, I've always been pretty lean. I find it very easy to lose weight, but very hard to gain it. Unfortunately, I did very little sports in my youth, and so around age 27 or so, I was pretty lean at about 74 kilograms or 160 pounds, and that's when I really started doing fitness. So for my first few years of fitness, I was basically just doing yoga and climbing, but even that bulked me up a little bit. As the years went on, I tried out different sports, and I eventually got into the sort of weightlifting and calisthenics that I like to do now, and eventually stabilized around 80 kilograms. And honestly, being 80 kilograms from having been 72, also as an adult, I was like feeling pretty big, I was feeling pretty heavy. And particularly in the circles I run in, I'm hanging out with a lot of climbers and trail runners, and these people are very, very light on average. I was listening to an episode of the Nugget Climbing Podcast, and they were interviewing this guy who's like a very high level boulderer, and he was talking about challenges as a heavy climber. And he dropped his stats, and he was 185 pounds, but he was 5'9". I'm 6'1", and I weighed 175 pounds. And so that was kind of a wake up call for me where I was like, wait a minute, I'm not heavy, I'm just tall. I'm heavier than people who are shorter than me, but for my height, I'm not actually heavy at all. I have long ass limbs and heavy ass bones, which gives me terrible leverage in almost everything. But then the more I thought about it, the only way to make the most I can out of my leverages that I have is to actually pack on more muscles so that I can get more strong. The type of shoulders that are able to do the type of things that I want to do, like handstand push-ups and just being generally stronger, are bigger and more rotund than the current shoulders I had. So I set off on a 1-year mission to try to gain some serious weight. Essentially, I wanted to upgrade my hardware so that in the long run, I'll be able to run some better software and actually be able to become stronger and a better athlete in the long run. And so now let's get into the side effects of bulking. Side effect number 1 is the chafe. No one warned me about the chafe. Why did no one warn me about the chafe? So if you aren't skipping leg day like me, this might not be as big of a deal as it is for you, but I did not realize how much of my gait relied on having a thigh gap. Oh my golly. So I never did any direct adductor training during the year, but nonetheless, from just doing squats and split squats, turns out my adductors absolutely ballooned. My quads and glutes also ballooned, but there's nothing for them to rub on. And now I finally understand why men wear compression shorts. Wow. I've completely had to change my underwear strategy for basically any physical activity whatsoever. It's got to be long, tight trunks if I'm taking more than like 100 steps. And if I'm doing like a 10K run or longer, I need full-on compression Spanx. In addition, I would even get chafing in my armpits where my lats now touch my triceps, both from swimming and from running. So there was a phase where I had to like lube up my shoulders with Vaseline in order to go for a run. Luckily, I seem to have outgrown that, but the tight compression underwear is an absolute must. And I've basically had to completely relearn how to walk in swim trunks. So it's not very comfortable. Of course, I'm happy that my legs are now stronger and more generally capable in most things, unless, of course, you quantify capability by being able to walk without sandpapering your scrot. So that's something to be aware of. You really might have to change your underwear strategy. Watch out. Side effect number 2 is being hot. One of the problems with increased girth is that dreaded surface area to volume ratio. As you gain weight, your volume increases faster than your surface area does, and so your body becomes worse at dissipating heat. Add to that the fact that you're also eating at a caloric surplus, which means you have more energy and you're burning more energy on average. And it's just a recipe for the night sweats, honestly. I've always been a guy who runs pretty hot. I grew up in the rural Midwest, and in the summer it gets pretty darn hot there, but we always had basements in order to beat the heat. And then half the year it's really, really cold, so you don't have to worry about it. But now I'm living in the South Pacific, and it's pretty hot and humid year round. And so being 11% more massive is not a bonus in any way. My resting level of perspiration is significantly higher, and yeah, there are some times where I just don't want to be a sweaty mess all the time, you know? It's fine while I'm here in the gym, but yeah, I could do without the extra heat, honestly. Side effect number 3 is that you will outgrow your clothes. And of course, yeah, this seems pretty obvious in retrospect. Obviously, increased mass is going to mean increased girth, so your volume will increase. And if you build muscle, it's going to change the shape of your body and how you fit into your clothes. I understood that in principle, but I didn't really realize that it would mean that most of my favorite clothes just suddenly won't fit anymore. But as I progressed through the year, most of my favorite shorts and shirts suddenly got a little bit snug. At first, it was like okay, and I just felt more muscular in them, but eventually it just became very uncomfortable, and I had to upsize most of my things. After filming this B-reel that you're watching right now, I'm officially going to be getting rid of everything that's size L or smaller, which honestly feels kind of good. I'm really enjoying this XXL aura and mindset I've adopted now. So that's great. But honestly, I hate shopping and I'm really picky about the way my clothes fit. And so when I find some clothes I like, I just wear them out. Which is why on this channel and basically all of my videos, I'm wearing like one of 4 outfits. So get used to this XXL shirt. It's very comfortable, so you'll probably be seeing it a lot in the future. But the silver lining to all this is that I've discovered something that I'd like to call aspirational sizing, where I'm buying the type of clothes that I want to be able to fit well. I think strictly speaking, I probably don't need to go XXL in this. A single XL probably would have worked, but I tried on both of them in the store, and honestly, this one was a bit more comfortable. So I'm sticking with it. I'm trying to exude that XXL aura. Side effect number 4 is always being full. And this for me is by far the hardest part of bulking. You always have to eat more than you want to, and you always just kind of feel bloated and full and slow. And I think this is part of the bulking journey that people actually underestimate. They think, oh wow, you just get to eat as much as you want all the time. Wow, that sounds so great and so easy. Except it isn't. It's not about eating as much as you want. It's about eating as much as required for you to gain weight. And for me personally, that's way more than I want to eat. If I eat till I'm full, I lose weight. That's just how it is. You, of course, might be different, but it's definitely a thing in proper bodybuilding and strength community that you really do have to get in a lot of food. And it often takes a lot of effort and planning to actually overeat past what your level of satiation is. And I do think this would be easier if you're content to eat a lot of junk food, because it's very easy to overeat junk food by design. But I'm not content to do that. All of my strength and bodybuilding and flexibility work is to improve my body's capabilities and my body's health in order to just live a better life. So I'm not willing to cut corners and do things that I think will have a long-term negative effect on my health, like eating a bunch of junk food. And so this means that 80 to 90% of the food that I'm actually eating on a weekly basis is just actual whole foods. And I find that when I just eat whole foods, I have no desire to overeat. And this side effect just gets worse as it goes on, because the more weight you actually gain, the more calories you burn resting. And so the more you have to eat then in the future to actually fuel your body, and the more you have to eat to maintain a surplus. There was one day while we were in Tasmania that we did a 30-kilometer trail run, and my Garmin watch estimated that I burned over 7,000 calories. And so on days like that, it's just literally impossible to eat enough food. And so a few of the strategies that I used to get around this were a heavy use of carbs throughout the end of this to allow me to eat more, and drinking a lot of my calories through milk and bone broth. But generally speaking, I felt pretty full most of the time, and eating sometimes felt like a chore. Side effect number 5 of bulking is the sore feet. So imagine that you've increased your mass by over 10% in the last year. What part of your body is going to feel that mass the most? On a scale from the top of your forehead to the tip of your toes, well, it's probably closer to the tip of your toes, right? So the lower we get on our body as we travel down, the more of the weight of your body has to be supported by those body parts. Of course, this is the reason that our legs are bigger and stronger than our arms, generally speaking, because it has to be that way in order for us to go about our daily lives. But as I was gaining weight, this caused me some trouble a couple times. When I would go on long hikes or long runs, previously, I would get sore calves or sore quads or something like that. But as I was gaining weight, I realized that the limiting factor in sort of my endurance performance was actually extreme soreness that I would get in my feet, in those tiny little muscles and ligaments that all move around and support, a healthy foot. And so as it turns out, I just needed to account for that and spend a bit more time warming into long runs and ramping up volume slowly, and then just giving my feet more time to recover than I used to. A few months ago, I wanted to incorporate some sprint training into my weekly interval run, and I got terrible shin splints the very first time. So I need to be better about ramping up the intensity and the volume of lower leg training very, very slowly and carefully. Because even though my heart and lungs are ready to deal with my new mass, my feet, not so much. But after discussing all of these side effects, I don't want you to leave with the picture that it's all bad. Of course, my primary goals of building muscle in order to get stronger were reached. I'm very happy with the way my body looks, and all of my lifts went up throughout the year. I had no major plateaus in any of my lifts whatsoever, except for a minor back tweak that took me out of squatting for a while. So I'm very happy with the results from this bulk, and just in the last few weeks of going back to more of like maintenance calories and just eating to satiety but not more, this felt so good. So I think I'm going to continue at this body weight for a while, spend a little bit more time specifically strength training in order to maximize the strength for the muscle that I've built, and then maybe in 6 months to a year or so, I'll try to push past that 200-pound mark once and for all. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your time. If you're interested in the weightlifting program that I was running for the first half of this, it's in the description, called the 2-Hour Body. If you're interested in finally solving your flexibility problems once and for all, my online course, Finding Flexibility, will be out soon. The link for Finding Flexibility is also in the description. And with that, have a great, strong, and bulky day. Take care. Peace.